There we go. I'm frequently shocked by how little effort it takes to start a live video. It's a little scary. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to my third of four Pride Month Q&A sessions. Yep, so dropping any questions you may have into the chat would be great. I can respond to those questions, but I also have some preloaded questions from my anonymous forum over here and from various other sources. So I will be taking any questions you have this evening. I suppose I should introduce myself for those of you who are uninitiated. My name is Mia Claire. I am a transgender woman and omnisexual. I do videos about my transition and the LGBTQIA+ community and of my abuse history and other various assorted mental health topics. So good stuff. All right, let's get to the first question from the anonymous forum. Oh, hey, Vicky, nice to see you. So first question off the anonymous forum this evening. What is your other pride flag? So I did specifically ask for people to ask about this last time. This flag up here, that is my omnisexuality pride flag. Yes, so expanding on that a little bit, omnisexuality is under the multisexual spectrum. That includes bisexuality, pansexuality, and omnisexuality. And polysexuality. I always forget that one because I don't know anybody who actually uses that label, but it does exist. Omnisexual is my sexual orientation. I am also omniromantic. I don't know if there's a flag for that, but I don't own it either way. So omnisexuals are attracted to any or no, well, all genders or no gender at all. They can have different preferences, the same as bisexuals can, but it is explicitly not. So this is where I have to be worried about sounding biphobic, because bisexuality does not mean that they are not attracted to all genders, but omnisexuality is explicitly stating that I am. So I am attracted to all genders. Unlike pansexuality, where they are attracted regardless of gender, I do experience different kinds of attraction based on the other person's gender. So that is why I identify as omnisexual. Okay. Do you still get periods? Yes, kind of. So when my doctor halved my estrogen dose, my period symptoms largely, they didn't go away completely, but they are way less intense than they were before. So yes, I do still get a period. No, it's not anywhere near as intense. So that's been kind of a relief, honestly, because my periods were wrecking me before. I was basically useless for several days, up to a week. Now it's more like, I have mild indigestion. I don't know what that's about. Why am I so irritable? Ugh. It's like the only time a month that I don't get along with one of my coworkers in particular. And I'm like, I always know that, don't get mad at this person because it's not their fault. It has nothing to do with them. Yeah, so I also stopped tracking it because it's just not as much of an interruption to my life anymore. So that's been nice. I don't know what combination of progesterone and lowering my estrogen did that, but hey, I'll take it. Yes, like any other woman, as validating as my periods were, I would really rather not have them. So kind of relieved in that way. All right. Why do you have to let your hair grow up before electrolysis? Ooh, I get to talk about hair growth cycles this evening. Very exciting subject. So basically, your hair doesn't grow the way that you think it does. Different hair grows at different times. It's like spurts. So it's like growing, sitting there for a few days, growing, sitting there for a few days. And particularly with hair that falls out or doesn't grow past a certain length or whatever weirdness bodies do because hair is weird, they have growth cycles where they just stop completely. And with facial hair, you have to catch your hair in the right phase of growth in order to kill it permanently with electrolysis. One of the best ways to detect the phase of growth is to shave completely and then see what grows back. When it's grown back, then you can kill it. But you have a 2-day window, depending on your hair growth rate and your metabolism and a few other factors and your hormones and everything. So if you kill it at the wrong phase, yes, it will come out of your face, but it will also possibly come back. So it actually really does matter when you have hair. And when you have a lot of hair, it looks like you are growing out your full on beard because you are, but it's just whatever is growing in that phase. So you can feel like you're killing the same hair multiple times, but you may not be. So hair removal is fun times. And that's one of the main reasons I'm like, let's not have to do this on my genitals prior to my surgery. I'm really hoping that laser will be enough because, yeah, I don't want to have to shave that area because the less attention I pay to that area, the happier I am. So, here's hoping. All right, let's take the next question. Oh, well, welcome to my channel, everybody. Apparently, I'm going to answer this one. What did you mean about your penis responding to different kinds of stimulation than before? Okay, again, trying to keep this PG-13. Ask these questions. These are important questions, but I'm going to have to try to answer it without getting too adult. Especially with the chasers around, you never know. Okay, so basically, the ways that you would interact with a penis on a testosterone filled person is not how mine works. Mine behaves much more like a large clitoris and responds to the same kinds of stimulation, i.e., vibration, rather than stroking. That does not really do it for me. And this is going to vary from person to person and hormone level to hormone level and frankly mood for some people. And in my case, I also have the added factor of gender dysphoria on top of it, which kind of kills any mood. So using that part of me in a way that is more male typical is not going to be enjoyable for me because of my gender dysphoria. But it also just, even when I get over that hurdle, doesn't work. That will never get me over the finish line, so to speak. Vibration will, and it has been great. Yes. Moving on to the next question. Did hormones affect your personality and interests? This is one of those things where, for me, I have a really strong sense of continuity to the person I was before my transition and before hormones, as opposed to who I am now. I feel like I am the same person. I just look more like myself now and feel more comfortable with myself now. Amanda says, my partner of nearly nine years, says that my personality and interest did change. She says a significant amount. I don't really feel that way. I feel like I'm just expressing the same interests as I feel more comfortable with myself, if that makes sense. Yeah, so I would say for me, it didn't feel like I changed my interests, but apparently that's not entirely true. My taste in music did change slightly. But again, I feel like that's more akin to more related to my social transition than anything else because I felt comfortable being into Britney Spears and other female artists, frankly, because before there was always this element of oh, I look like a guy and I feel like that could be really creepy and I don't want to have that appearance. And once you remove that layer from it, I felt way more comfortable being yeah, I'm into these people. I don't care. Judge me. I also just feel like a much stronger sense of identity and self than I did before. So I don't feel anywhere near as bothered by expressing those interests. So I would say I feel more comfortable with myself and therefore express my interests more, but I wouldn't necessarily say that my interests themselves changed. I am still the same person. I'm still into the same nerdy, dorky stuff that I always have been. So I wouldn't say that it changed my personality per se. That's going to vary person to person, of course. So, but for me, I feel very much like the same person, just happier and more angry sometimes. It's hard to explain because it's not just joy all the time. I'm not sitting here high on euphoria. You do experience the same emotions, but you actually don't have that static barrier that you can't cross over the thread. If I feel sad and I feel like crying, I will now, versus before when I would be sad and feel like crying but couldn't. And that's kind of the difference for me, is that I don't feel like there's an inhibition to it, you know? So, like, when I feel angry at somebody, I feel that more intensely too, but it doesn't feel quite like the same flavor of emotion as it did before, because I don't feel like testosterone rage is very different, and I don't know how to explain that. At least in a brain designed for estrogen. From what I'm told by trans men, they're like, yeah, no, don't know what you're talking about. That's kind of a you thing. That's what happens when you're running on the wrong hormones, because that's not my reaction to that at all. And I'm like, okay, enjoy your deeper voice and your facial hair. I don't know what you're about. um, okay. Will you be a virgin after your surgery? Uh, I mean, I guess it depends on how you define virginity. Um, if you're asking if I will have a hymen, the answer is no. And hymens are a really terrible test for virginity if you want to try to test for virginity, which is a weird thing to do in the first place. Virginity is kind of this non existent social thing that we invented, it's not a real thing. Um, for me, the definition of losing one's virginity is feeling as though you had sex, whatever that means for you or whatever. Because as a person with a penis, you would think that I would think I'm no longer a virgin when I have penetrative PIV sex. And what does that mean for gay men? What does that mean for me who doesn't use my penis in that way? Like, when I feel like I've had sex, that's when I've lost my virginity, so to speak. Um, so yes, I'm going to have a new experience with my new parts. Um, so in that sense, it will be like a virgin, not to channel Madonna too hard here, because I will be experiencing a kind of intimacy that I've never really experienced before, because I won't have gender dysphoria going into it, which is just really a mood killer. I don't know how to explain that more sufficiently than I have. Um, but yeah, I mean, it's going to feel different the first time I'm able to have sex with the right parts. And I'm really genuinely looking forward to that. Uh, it's gonna, I'm also like simultaneously not excited about that, because I'm gonna be so awkward. This will be the third time in my life that I've had to relearn how my parts work. And it's just awkward every single time, or at least it has been the first two times. And I don't know if that translates over, or how much of that is like connected with my own sense of gender dysphoria, because like obviously I have parts that don't feel right to me. So for me, it's like, okay, I need to make this work. That was always the way I framed it to myself. Like, this is what I've got, I'll make it work. And like that was the way I felt like most comfortable with it, but I never really truly felt like I was me even in that scenario. Um so it was always like, let's find whatever works. I don't care anymore. Like, fine, sure. Um yeah, so will I be a virgin? I will have a new experience. And if that qualifies to me as feeling like losing my virginity, then that's how I'll frame it. But honestly, I don't think that's going to be how I feel about it at all. So we will see, I guess. Did your transition affect your sexual orientation? We're on a thread tonight. I feel like one person went a little wild here. um, okay. So I was always aware that I was interested in boys, but I never really felt comfortable pursuing that aspect of my sexuality. And a lot of that was environmental, because I was living with my parents who are exceedingly homophobic and transphobic. So there was no way on earth that a person who looked like a guy who lived in their house was going to be able to bring home a partner who is also male presenting, and they were going to be okay with that. Like, that was never an option for me. So I didn't really get to explore that aspect of my sexuality, because when I moved out from my parents, I was already with Amanda. and we have a monogamous relationship. And I'm not saying that I lament that at all. Like, it's no one's fault. It's just I never really got to explore that aspect of my sexuality, and I never really felt safe um, doing that as a person. And like for me, it's gonna sound screwed up, but like I felt like I could understand how the equipment that I had been handed by the universe was supposed to work with other women than I could with men. And looking back on that, that's just purely a gender dysphoria thing and like internalized transphobia and homophobia. And it makes so much more sense to me now, like being outside of that situation. So as I felt more comfortable with myself and who I am and how I relate to other people, my sexuality sort of just clicked for me. I wouldn't say that my transition changed my orientation, it just made me more comfortable with it. And that is not everyone's experience. A lot of other trans people say that like they were completely straight when they thought they were cis and now they are completely straight in their like gender that they turned out to be. And I'm just that was not my experience. I felt yeah, so I feel like my role in my sexuality makes more sense to me now, more so than it changed, which, like, my orientation didn't change, I did. And that was super interesting to watch because I went from being in a straight passing relationship with another bi person to being a visibly queer relationship. And watching the reactions of those around us change was one of the more interesting aspects of that to me because like we never turned heads when we held hands before, we never turned heads when we kissed in public before, and it, like all of a sudden people are like doing double takes and like hushed tones, and like we had this one guy cheer for us on an IHOP. He was like, all right, all right. I was like, glad you approve. It's just really weird because both of us are bi and I'm omnisexual technically, and nothing changed in our relationship except how I presented. But suddenly the world was aware that we were a queer couple. And that was sort of an adjustment for me because I'd never been in a visibly queer relationship before. And yeah, it was kind of a mind fuck. I I also experienced for the first time people not assuming that we're a couple, which was new for me because like Amanda and I are very close. We hold hands, we're in each other's corner. We're it's obvious that we're in a relationship, I think. And like I remember this one time I was at my doctor's office and they asked like, "Oh, are you two sisters?" And I'm like, "Yeah, sure. Me, the brunette with hazel eyes, and her, the redhead with brown eyes. We're definitely siblings. That makes sense." Like, how is that more plausible than like friends, even? Like roommates. um, I couldn't wrap my head around that. I was like, "No, we're a couple. We snuggle." Which is like the most weird way I could have said that. Um, but she was like, "Oh, well, you all don't fight enough." And I'm like, "Is everything okay at home?" It was just weird, like weird little moments like that where people no longer assume we're a couple. And I don't know how I feel about that. Like on the one hand, it makes me safer, but on the other hand, it doesn't feel like I'm expressing myself, if that makes sense. Because like not that I feel like I have to like mark my territory or something weird like that, but I like people having the awareness that we are a couple. And that was a guarantee before. And now it's like this thing I have to prove. And then like even when like people know that we are a couple, I still feel the need to prove it because they're like, "Well, like, are you really a couple?" And it's like, "Yeah, I promise you we snuggle." Like, what is your threshold? What is the bar that we will pass? And then eventually it's like, "Oh, well, you're trans, so you're obviously the guy in the relationship." And I'm like, "Oh, no, no, no." There is no guy in this relationship. That's kind of the point. Um, I resent that whole like idea that queer couples have to follow cis heteronormative standards. It just doesn't make sense to me. And I was talking about this with a friend of mine today who is getting married on Monday. And I was just like, you never really know what things should carry over into a queer relationship. Like, who proposes? Like, that is a rule, a hard and fast rule in cis het relationships, that the guy proposes. That is just a thing. And like, in a queer relationship, there's not really a rule. And like, I'm not saying that women can't propose in a cis het relationship. I'm just saying it's not what's expected. And like, I figure there's a 75% chance that like Amanda and I are going to propose to each other at the same time. Like, that is what I think is going to happen. Um yeah, so it's just interesting sort of redefining. And like I was saying it in relation to weddings, because I was like, yeah, every tradition that I choose to include in my non-traditional marriage is going to necessarily feel like co-signing to the patriarchal ideas and centuries of nonsense that have built into this like standard thing that we just do, that like no one really thinks about, but it is like expected of you in a marriage. And it's just like really weird. And then people also project that into even our non-marriage, where it's like you expect one of us to be a guy and the other one to fulfill the role of a woman. And like, that's, I don't know how to explain to you that's not necessary. Like, screw your gender roles, first of all. Second, like, if I wanted to be with a man, I could go be with a man. I'm bi. Like, it just doesn't make sense to me. Like, this is the person that I'm with, and they're a woman, and therefore we are two women in a relationship. Why do you assume that one of us has to be the man? And like, it always comes down to this like sexual aspect too, because it's like, well, which of you is using the strap on? And it's like, who says we're using a strap on? Like, you are assuming a lot. And then, like in my case, because I have a penis, people tend to assume that I use my penis in a cis-normative way, and cis-het normative way, and I don't, because it doesn't work for me. Like, that's just not the kind of simulation that works. So, and like, I'd just be horribly dysphoric through the entire encounter, which is again pretty much a mood killer. So did my transition affect my sexual orientation? No. I would say it affected me and how I express that. And I feel a lot more comfortable expressing my interest in men now, because I'm not perceived as queer in that way. And for whatever reason, being perceived as queer as a woman being interested in other women is fine to me. That was never like in high school when people called me gay because I was wearing makeup and doing things that they couldn't understand as gender expression and assumed were sexuality. And like, first of all, makeup does not make anyone gay. Anyway, I would literally say, well, if I'm gay, I'm a lesbian. And for whatever reason, that felt totally fine to me. But for whatever reason, being seen as a gay man was not going to do it for me. Whereas being seen as a straight man was like safe. And I don't know how else to explain that, but it wasn't my comfort zone. It was where I felt safe. And safe is different from comfort. Those of you who are familiar with my dating history will know that I definitely dated several women, but I've kissed guys before. I've had interest in men before, and like, it's super confusing when you don't understand your like gender and sexuality, because you retroactively reprocess all the events in your life and you're like, oh, that was a crush. That's happened. I actually had one of my oldest friends from first grade be like, I am familiar with all of the men in your life. Please tell me who you had a crush on, because they were all garbage. And I'm like, whoa, first of all, painting with a broad brush much? That was a tongue twister. I'm proud of getting through that one. Yeah, I was like, nope, we are not going to have this conversation. I shut that one down. I was like, no. You can validate me, but you are not going to embarrass me. especially like it's on Facebook where other like mutual friends can see it. I'm like, no, we're not doing this. Nope, 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 nope. I know I'm gonna get a text from her tomorrow and be like, was it this one? Because I'm pretty sure it was this one. Anyway, what are the extra letters in LGBT and what do they mean? Okay, so they're not extra. They belong there. We are all part of the same community. The other letters they're referring to are LGBTQIA+. Sometimes I've heard people use the term queer alphabet soup, but if you are cishet and allosexual, please do not use that term. That is an us-only term. Yes, so let's take these one at a time. Q is for queer, which is kind of a catch-all for a lot of things. It's people who don't feel comfortable identifying as transgender, but do have a gender outside the normal binary or something of that ilk. I for intersex, which I've talked about in my other weekly Pride Month videos, but basically it is a person who is anatomically, genetically, or endocrinologically different than the gender sex binary, I should say. So, yep, that is a thing that I'm trying to figure out if I am. That's a whole other story that I'm hoping my surgeon can resolve. A stands for a couple of different things. So that's, oh, I should have mentioned that the intersex pride flag is now part of the progress flag. That is the one with the black, brown, pink, white, blue, yellow, purple circle, chevron on the side, this side, because mirror images. No, this side, mirror images. I don't know. Cameras are hard. And then the standard rainbow running down the main part of the flag. That is a welcome addition, in my opinion. Intersex people are routinely subjected to horrific genital mutilations at birth, and they call it corrective surgery. They're grossly misunderstood, hyper fetishized. They are definitely a group of people who need better representation and support and more understanding. So glad to have them on the flag with us. It kind of bothers me though. I love the progress flag, but where does it end? Because like there are a lot of flags in the LGBTQIA plus community, and the rainbow is supposed to be all encompassing. It's supposed to capture all of us, and adding more stuff on the rainbow flag may not necessarily be the best idea, especially like I was even uncomfortable with putting the trans pride flag as part of that flag because it treats us as though we're not part of that community, but we're being welcomed in. And I don't love that. The problem I have with the rainbow flag personally is that most people would assume that it is purely representative of a gay man or a gay woman. And I am a bisexual woman, so it's sort of erasing part of that. And like, I don't know. It's tricky. There is actually a flag specific to gay men, and of course there is a lesbian flag, but we have some problems to work out in this community, and the flags keep changing, and like that's a good thing. We want to keep making progress, but it does make it hard for people outside of this community and even frankly within it to keep up. Yeah, so the flag is always changing, and like if we are going to have a flag that specifically represents LGBTQIA plus, and that would be the progress flag, then great. Yeah, put the I on there, but where's the A? And that's what brings us to the next letter of this queer alphabet soup, which is A, which is for asexual, aromantic, and agender. Not ally. And I'm sick of seeing allies who think it is for them. I'm sorry. We do need allies, and you are welcome to support us and all of that lovely stuff, but please, you're not part of this community. You are our friends, our neighbors, and our parents, and our loved ones, and like all of those things, and that's great. But you are not in this community, and we're not inviting you in because it's not an invitation-based thing. Let me know when you have some oppression. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. And this is where people start to wonder whether labeling ourselves at all is a great idea, because like we are an oppressed minority, and like you have to wonder if it's terribly healthy for some people to wear their oppression on their sleeve, so to speak. And the purpose of Pride Month is to not feel ashamed of who we are and push back against that oppression, frankly. So I think it's very important for that to happen, but it's a tricky thing because some people really do make it a core piece of their identity. And I talked about this last week where my therapist likes to remind me that only one shelf on my bookshelf of awesome is anything related to my queerness. I have many interests. I am a complete person who happens to be queer, and I need to remember that, not the other way around. Like I sometimes have that problem with this channel, frankly, because like it has so become about my transition, and that's important. And I'm documenting for myself and for other people who are experiencing similar hardships in their life. And I think it's really important, but I need to remember that it's not all that I am. It's barely even an interesting thing about me, honestly. um, yeah. All right. Did HRT affect your libido? Yes. Yes, it did. Oh my God, yes, it did. So a lot of people who transition from testosterone to estrogen, and I do mean that in the chemical sense, just HRT, um, experience a dramatic drop in their libido. I never had that. um, if anything, my libido went up. It is a less common reaction, but definitely a thing that happens. And especially once I added progesterone to the mix, my libido just yeah. That was another thing that helped me really come to terms with my sexuality is like, oh, that's what sexual arousal is supposed to feel like. Got it. Hello. Hello, dear friend. I was explaining this to a friend of mine recently, and the way that felt most accurate to me to describe the difference in how my libido functions is like on an iPhone. You used to, like, when the phone would ring, you used to not be able to dismiss it. You had to wait for the call to end because your only other option was to actually decline the call, send them to voicemail, or just let it ring out. And eventually they added the ability to silence the ringer, and that was great. But now in the newer version of iOS, you can swipe it away. And that is what my sexuality feels like now. Because previously I couldn't make it shut up. It wouldn't leave me alone. Like once the mood struck, it had to go to completion, or it had to like I had to be distracted from it, if that makes sense. Like some really strong emotion or something would have to override it. And that was unpleasant. That was very unpleasant because like the way that my body worked was not right for me, and I would just feel so dysphoric through the whole damn thing. And like I thought it was normal. So I was just like, fine. I just tried to shove it down, shove it down, shove it down. And yeah, so my sexuality, or rather my libido, was frustrating. It didn't feel connected to me. It felt like a thing that was external to me that I had to like cope with. And now it feels like my friend. It's kind of annoying sometimes because my friend will show up when I'm trying to work, you know. It's like, hey, can you come back later? And my friend's like, okay, all right, see you around, but I'm here if you need me. And that is so much better. Like I have a much better relationship with my libido than I did before. Again, I feel like the thing I want people to understand about HRT is that it makes you feel more like yourself. And that can mean many, many different things. Um, for me, everything just sort of clicked and aligned and felt right. And that includes my libido. Um, the other nice thing is that I no longer wake up with erections anymore. And that was great because I did not enjoy that. Not one bit. Um, the problem with that, of course, is that like you have to worry about atrophy, which is not a word you want to hear in relation to your genitals ever. Um, or most things, actually. I'm trying to think of a place where I'd use the word atrophy that it wouldn't be terrible. Anyway, since that muscle no longer stretches itself, you are now responsible for keeping it from atrophying. And that's scary because it's dysphoric for me to go near the damn thing. So I, in preparation for my surgery and to reduce the amount of pelvic floor therapy that I will have to do after my surgery, I have been trying to keep things moving. Um, try to treat it like a medical procedure, like a sort of muscle workout kind of thing, which is great because I feel disconnected. Like there's a difference between my mood and my sexual arousal now. So like they don't necessarily agree. And if I'm not in the mood, I can be as sexually aroused as I want. I'm never going to get over the finish line. I can, or vice versa. I can be in the mood, like emotionally, but just not have the physicality there. And it's just not going to happen. Like it all has to come together and it's more complicated, but it's also more natural for me. And it's been an adventure, and that's why I'm like not super excited to relearn all of that again. But I'm hoping this will be a slightly less jarring transition. Um, yes. So my libido, yeah, much better relationship with it now, much better understanding of it now. Um, I'm kind of wondering what my libido is going to be like after surgery. I know for a fact that I can't do anything with it for several weeks after surgery, which might be kind of tricky. Um, so I'm kind of hoping that I don't end up too frustrated. Um, that frustration definitely factors into more aspects of my life than it did before HRT. Like I'll just be in a sour mood and have no idea why, and then like, oh right, I have a sex drive. Versus before where it was like I couldn't get anything done. So the disadvantage of being able to swipe away the call from nature um, is that voicemail inbox is going to fill up sooner or later. um, so yeah, but the other nice thing is that when I'm done, I no longer have a refractory period. So I can go again if I choose, if I'm in the mood and everything's aligned perfectly, or I can just go back to what I was doing. Like, yeah, that's great. I don't have to like sit there for 10 minutes waiting for my energy to come back. Um, so that's been nice. Again, it all just feels so much more natural to me than before when it was like, I shouldn't be reacting this way. Why do I feel this way? This is ridiculous. Like, um, yeah, so for me, it's been a major upgrade, and I'm hoping that upgrading the hardware will improve my experience with the software. Uh, there you go. There's the IT girl. All right. I think we may have covered all the questions. I think this may be it. I have some more questions about dilation, but I don't know that I want to go there. But plus, I got 20 minutes left. Oh wait, here's one I haven't answered. No, I totally did this one. Okay, did that one. Um, Well, I guess I can answer this one. Didn't quite go into this as much detail as I thought I might. Um, no, I totally did. This was the question about mood swings when I was on pregnancy hormone levels. I guess I could talk about that more. So, pregnancy hormone levels was an adventure. I no longer, I'm like right at the bottom edge of that range, which I think is why my periods have mostly gone away. But when I was way up there, it was crazy. Um, my endocrinologist told me an interesting thing because, like, my first endocrinologist was so concerned about my prolactin levels. And, like, it's because if your prolactin levels are high, your doctor can't tell the difference between you basically lactating and you having a brain tumor. And like in the absence of milk production, which I wasn't producing, like if I tried, I could get like a drop. But she was just so concerned about this, and it's like apparently not even enough of a risk for my current endocrinologist, to bother checking it more than once a year. So she's like, yeah, let me know if you start lactating, then we'll worry. And I'm like, okay, all right, I will definitely let you know that. um, yeah, so like hormones are crazy. They're just so crazy. Um, part of me is curious. Maybe I won't go there tonight. But yeah, she was just so worried about a pituitary tumor, and I'm like, I think you'd be able to tell. Like, worst case, you give me a CT scan, you see nothing's going on. Like, I don't know, it's just weird. I think I'm gonna spend the next 18 minutes of this video, because I'm only scheduled for an hour, talking about what happened to me at my doctor's office last week. Um, because I was just so disturbed by this whole circumstance. It was just so messed up. And I posted about it on my Facebook, but I didn't talk about it publicly. Um, so I went to the same office that I see my normal primary doctor at. My normal primary doctor is fantastic. Like, I adore her. I recommend her to literally all of my friends, especially my trans friends, because I don't know how to explain this, but there's a difference between a doctor who sees you as woman with penis versus a doctor who sees you as man with breasts. And it's hard to quantify, but it's there. And they paired me up with someone for my physical, and I didn't get to choose like who this person was. I have no idea who they were. So I show up and I'm like, whatever, fine. And I'm here for blood work. Like, you can read a chart as well as I can. Let's go. And she's like, why are you taking del estrogen? And I'm like, keep scrolling through the chart. Let's get there. And she's like, oh, well, I would have had no idea. They are obviously working. And I'm like, I know what you're saying. And I know you think it's a compliment, but it's not. And like, okay, so you don't look trans. That's not a compliment. I am trans. Why are you treating being trans as something to be undesirable? Like, what are you saying about me then? Like, just because I happen to pass your gender test doesn't mean that I'm any more or less valid of a woman. Like, that's such a weird thing to say. And like, obviously I'm happy that I'm getting gendered correctly, but what are you doing? Tell me I look pretty. I'd rather hear that. And then you'll realize that as my doctor, it's kind of a weird thing to say that too, which brings up, why are we having this conversation? So it got worse. And I think I talked about that before, but the next time I showed up was after my laser. And she asked me, how have you been the past 2 weeks? Standard doctor banter. And I was like, well, I had a 135-watt laser shot in my genitals. That felt great. And she goes, yeah, for a man, that must be really hard. And I was like, wow, okay. um, I'm not a man. And she's like, well, I mean, coarse pubic hair. And I'm like, all pubic hair is coarse. What are you talking about? And I tried to just move on because I was there for my lab results. And I was sitting there wondering the entire time, why the hell isn't this a telehealth visit? And I just wanted to get out of there. I just wanted to get my results and go home and have breakfast. And what did she say next? She was like, I love your hair. And again, weird thing to hear from your doctor. And she's like, yeah, not everybody can grow it out like that. And I'm like, I mean, it's covered in split ends, but sure. And I was like, thank you. And I was like, you should have seen me. Like, it grew back really quickly. You should have seen me when I had a shaved head like a couple of years ago. And I showed her the photo from my Instagram. I'm just going to pull it up. Let me see here. Instagram, blah blah blah. And for some reason, every time I post a photo to Instagram, I can never find my old photos again because they move down and over a photo. And I'm like, I can't find it. Anyway, this photo where I'm comparing myself from 2014 to 2019. So a 5-year difference, a lot of hair difference. And she looks at my photo and says, "You were hot as a guy." And I'm like, oh God. I was never a guy. Like, I didn't say that, but that's the truth of it. I was never a guy. I just was kind of forced to look like one. And I was like, thanks. I was miserable. And she goes, well, I'm straight. It's a compliment. And I'm like, it's not, but I'm going to try to take it as one. And she turns to Amanda and says, I mean, you agree with me, right? And Amanda's like frozen in terror. Like, I don't know what to do in this situation. And like, I tried to diffuse the tension. I was like, well, we've been together for nearly 9 years and I only came out 3 years ago. So I would say she was attracted to me either way. What the fuck are you doing right now? Like, what is happening right now? You've called me a guy twice today. What are you doing? And like, she eventually figured out that all of her compliments weren't working on me. So she just like gave up on the whole affair. And I'm like, what are you doing right now? Like, she clearly thinks of me as a woman, but she has this narrative in her head that I used to be a guy. And that's just not my experience at all. In fact, my life only makes sense if I think of myself as always having been a woman because there's a lot of weird stuff that like doesn't make sense otherwise. And I'm like, I just don't know what the hell you're thinking right now. And a couple of my friends were like, don't go back to this freaking doctor. Like, what are you doing? And like, part of me is like, no, this is the sort of person that I need to teach. And another friend of mine said, yeah, let me tell you something. You're there for medical care. You're not there to teach them how to do their jobs. And I'm like, you've got a point. Always does. That friend's very annoying. So yeah, I was just like, it's a very uncomfortable thing to be misgendered at this stage of my transition. And like, I understand that she thinks of me as a woman, but she also ordered a bunch of STD testing for me. And I don't know if that's standard or not. And given the reaction that she had, I'm kind of wondering if she thinks I'm a sex worker. Like, it's just really weird. Like, why would your head jump to that conclusion? Like, I have one partner. I haven't changed partners ever since the last time that this office tested me. I don't have any other risk factors for STDs other than my needles, and they're factory sealed. Like, why are we testing these? I didn't ask for this, and I'm pretty sure you can't test me for HIV without my consent. Like, all my tests came back fine, of course. I'm just like, what do you think I am? You know? And like, I didn't expect to be asking that question 3 years into my transition. Like, that's so strange. And especially while I'm getting ready for bottom surgery, like, I don't know, I'm centering so much of my life right now around these body parts that I'm trying desperately to be rid of, and I'm having to pay so much attention to them. And then, like, the next year after my surgery, I'm going to, and forever after that, but mostly that first year, I'm going to spend it like having to think about taking care of my new equipment because it's new equipment and in a way that like I wouldn't have to do if I was cis. And it's like I'm trying not to think about this damn thing, and you're sitting here calling me a man, and it was just a lot. It's just so much, and like I don't know what to do. Like I don't know if I'll ever even have to see this doctor again. I'm kind of tempted to reach out to my normal doctor and be like, "Hey, just so you know, this is pretty uncomfortable. And I know for a fact you have other trans patients there, and if she treats them like this, they're never coming back. So I want to spend some time teaching her how to be a human being." I don't know. It was just really, really uncomfortable. And I don't know what to do. I don't know whether I should go back. I don't know if I should like have been more forceful in my telling her this is not okay. Like, because if I go back, what does that even say then? Like, did I mean that? I don't know. I'm all over the place with this one. I'm still processing it. It's very raw. I just weirdly feel uncomfortable being called a man. And like even the whole like you're anatomically male thing, and it's like, no, I'm not. I'm a woman. These are my parts. These are the parts of a woman. I am female and therefore my anatomy is female. You want to call it an anatomical term, that's fine, but don't gender it. Like I'm a woman, this is my penis. I don't want it either. um yeah, so I've just had a hard time processing what the hell I should do in that situation because especially since the visits are so spread out that like there's a very good chance I'll never interact with this doctor again. And like I'm kind of wondering if the next time I do I need to like start that appointment by saying, "Hey, I want to start this off by saying I am really uncomfortable with the way that with the care that I received from you last time. Like you literally called me a fucking man. Like what is wrong with you?" Like I get that you're saying, "Well, you're a woman now and that's better, I guess, but you need to stop treating me as if I was ever a man because that doesn't even make sense. It's not even representative of like how am I supposed to trust the rest of your care when you get that wrong?" It's one friend was like, "So they're blind." I'm like, "Well, yeah, so I've just had a rough time processing that encounter, especially like I said 3 years in. I've been blessed. I pass for better or worse as toxic as passing culture is. I don't really have those problems on a regular basis. I get gendered on the phone correctly most of the time. Like it's it's been so long, so long since I've been misgendered, and it like just totally threw me because the context was weird. I'm like, you know what I am. You should know how to treat somebody like me. Like, why would you ever compare me to a man? Do you understand that that causes me pain? You're a doctor. Do no harm, bitch. Like, I don't know. So I have to decide what to do about that situation. And I'm, like I said, I have to come back there multiple times. So I'm like, not looking forward to it. Um, which I think is a sign that I need to do something about that situation, whether that's just not even like, it's going to be a thing if I ask to not see that doctor again. So I'm kind of wondering if I need to just ask positively for my doctor specifically instead of her, or like what I should do in that situation. Um, I don't know. I'm just not a man and would appreciate being treated correctly like you would any other woman. That'd be great. Let's do that. And it's hard with medical people because like I kind of have to tell them like you don't take the meds that I'm taking for any other reason. So yeah, it's kind of obvious. And that's like any doctor I see. Hell, I have that with like laser hair removal or electrolysis, which I'm looking to get back into because my facial hair is driving me crazy and I really don't want to have to shave in the few days that I'm stuck in the hospital with my new vagina. Yeah, like I have to tell them because they need to know what meds you're taking so they don't screw you up. And like, yeah, like it's a liability if I don't tell them. I had that with my I went to a dermatologist and I had to like strip down to my underwear and I'm like, well, if you were uncomfortable with trans people, we're going to find out real quick. Um Fortunately that doctor was fine. She was like, yeah, whatever. I don't even care. Like, great, good for you. Which is kind of the attitude I needed from this doctor where it's like blood is blood. I don't really care. Like urine is urine. Let's go. I don't know. I don't know. I just still feel really weird about it, obviously, because it's frankly traumatizing to be misgendered. And especially after that, like decades and decades and decades. And like, this goes back to when I was like 4 and 5 years old. Like, I got in trouble for correcting my teachers and being like, no, I'm a girl. And like, they were like, no, you're not. And I'm like, well, I'm a child. I don't have the capacity to argue with you about this, but I promise you, I am a girl. And like, my entire life has been being forced to be recognized as someone I'm not. And then like having in a place where I'm supposed to feel safe, someone be like, well, you'll always still be a man, or you were once a man, like whatever view that is. Like, I kind of wonder if this person's going to look at me differently after I have surgery. And I'm like, you shouldn't, because I'm a woman, regardless of my parts. And it's just frustrating and painful. And I thought I was done with this. And I know that I never will be. Like, there's always, I get misgendered in comments on the internet because being publicly trans is fun. That feels different than my doctor, who I'm supposed to be able to trust. And like, again, new doctor, did I ever really build up trust with her? Not really, you know? I was going over this encounter with my therapist and she was like, what the hell? I'm like, we haven't even gotten a third of the way through the story. And her suggestion was that I don't go back there because I just don't have the time to bother educating other people who are supposed to be caregivers on how to give care. And she's got a point, but like I also had to educate her at multiple instances. So like there is an obvious advantage to educating the people who are caring for you to the point where they no longer hurt you. But it's just, do I want to invest in that because it's some rando at the same office? Like it's not even necessarily the case that I'll encounter her again. So like, I don't know. That's where I think I'm landing on this. I think I need to like wait and see if I encounter her again and then have that conversation and be like, look, I was really uncomfortable. And frankly, if it happens again, I'm not coming back. But like, here we go. Cause I've got to go back there for um, two more vaccinations. Simple stuff, nothing major, nothing scary. But like, I'm one of those people that like, can you vaccinate me for everything, please? Because that sounds great. Like, why wouldn't you want to be vaccinated for everything? Yeah, some part of that visit wasn't covered by my insurance, and I need to argue with them too. It's just constant with the insurance people. Like, that's what I'm gonna have to deal with my laser because, and I need to just bite the bullet and message my doctor about this because, like, they gave me a quote and they gave me a receipt. The amounts happen to match, but it doesn't say on the receipt what I actually paid for. So I have a feeling my insurance provider is going to look at that and be like, well, I don't know. What'd you get done here? Who knows? It's impossible to tell. What do we know? And I'm going to be like, so I'm going to ask them to generate a receipt now that they've actually taken the money off my card, which was a whole other layer to this, and say like what procedure was included in this so I can submit the paperwork to my insurance and get reimbursed for the nearly $2,000 that I'm floating my insurance provider right now. Yay. And that's like, again, I need to acknowledge my privilege in this. Like, most people can't drop that kind of money to wait for their insurance to cover them. Like, it's scary. Trans healthcare is expensive, and And when I say trans healthcare, I mean not just gender affirming care, but care that is gender affirming, as in my primary doctor needs to be affirming my gender the entire time as well. Um, it's hard to find providers that treat you like a human being and like yourself and accept you for who you are. And like, it's tricky. And that's why I'm still seeing the same doctors that I was seeing at the time that I lived in a town that's 3 hours away, because I spent a lot of time and effort building up a team of people that I felt safe with. And I didn't want to lose all of that coming into surgery. And like, especially since I can't lose my therapist completely because I need them to reissue letters for me, like, I couldn't afford to just leave them. I need that history, which sucks. But like, I got to make it work. And that's what I'm going to spend the next several months doing leading up to my surgery, because I need to get my life together enough to actually go through with this crazy thing. So, lots of prep work to do, lots of exciting appointments every 4 weeks. I do want to get back into electrolysis, like I said, because the idea of having to shave while I'm in the hospital with my brand new vagina is just like, no, 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 no. We're not going to do that. We're not going to have like the ultimate euphoria mixed with the same old crappy dysphoria. Like, I'm always going to have dysphoria about some aspects of my body that cannot be corrected, but like my face, come on. The only reason I stopped at all is because of COVID, and I'm not going to stop until this is done, because I'm done dealing with this nonsense in my life. So we're going to make it work. And on that note, I will end tonight's stream. Thank you for everyone who dropped in. Thank you for people who submitted their questions anonymously so that we could have a good old time. And keep them coming. We got one more week, one more Friday left in Pride Month. And then we'll be closing this out for this year, which is sad because COVID's still a factor and there is no real Pride happening, which is sad. But we'll have it back one day soon, and it'll be a good time for everybody. This camera has decided my lighting is completely different than it was. There we go. I need to upgrade my equipment in here. Like, that's one of the primary things I want to do. I want to replace this chair. This chair is horrible. It's so bad. But hey, you can see my base now. That's something. Hello, Macy. I've had this one for a long time. And yes, I actually play. It's been a while, but I do play. All right. Good night, y'all. Thank you for coming by, and I will see you again next week. Bye.